And there's a handful of rules that I want to emphasize and review on this. Hopefully, again, you recognize the terms. We'll review what they mean. The first is commutative property. Commutative property applies to both addition and multiplication. And basically what the commutative property says is the order does not affect the operation. Okay? Meaning, if you add two things, so in terms of A and B, if we add A and B together, that's going to be equivalent to adding B and then A. It doesn't matter the order that you do this. Now, commutative property does not work for subtraction, right? 5 minus 3 is not the same thing as 3 minus 5. But in addition and multiplication, A times B and B times A, the order does not affect the outcome of the operation. Right, a second property to be aware of is called the associative property. Once again, this applies to both addition and multiplication. When you're looking at the associative property, what that states is that it doesn't affect the order. The order is going to stay the same, but the grouping isn't going to affect the operation. Okay, so when you're adding and multiplying, the outcome is not affected by how it's grouped. This will involve 3 or more objects. So if you had the sum of two things and you added a third thing to that, that's going to be equivalent to adding the first to the sum of the second two, the last two. And notice that the order doesn't change, just the way that it's grouped together. In multiplication, it's the same thing. The product of the first two things times a third is equivalent to the first times the product of the second and third. That grouping does not affect the outcome of the operation. Right, the next concept, again, is one that you should be familiar with, the distributive property. The distributive property has to involve a single term as a factor and then multiple terms as a factor. In this case, grouped together, either added or subtracted. And when you distribute something, again, we use that to actually define what's happening. We're multiplying it through each of the individual terms. So we get A, B, plus the quantity AC if we distribute or expand out that product. Okay, the final rule that you need to be familiar with is called the zero product rule. And the zero product rule states the following. If you have a product, A times B, that's equal to 0, then the solutions to that, or the outcomes for that, is either A has to be 0 or B has to be 0. So again, when we solve equations, or when you guys have ever solved equations, you're using zero product rule in order to solve it. You set your factors equal to 0, solve each individual factor as your potential solutions.